This is my review of Ruby Anthology Volume 4, I Burn. And before I started reading it, I thought to myself, okay, what do I really want to get from this? And despite my love of Bumblebee, that's not what I really wanted here. We got plenty of that in From Shadows. But what I really wanted was more of something like one of my favorite pages in the actual Ruby and manga. This takes place during the story that Yang told to Blake about how she dragged Ruby for miles and miles and miles looking for any sign of Raven, and then they were attacked by Graham. But this part wasn't in her story. Even with Yang just a child, barely able to move, she stood up in front of her little sister and promised her that she would protect her. And that's so much of Yang's character that we really don't see enough. This loving, overwhelming, protective sister who just wants to keep Ruby safe. And I was really hoping we'd see that in I Burn, and I gotta say I was not disappointed. Not only did we have Yang constantly coming to Ruby's protection again and again, but we even got flashbacks to young Yang and Ruby. Seriously, I mean, look at little Ruby. She is freaking adorable. Absolutely love that part. Two different stories within this anthology are Yang reading stories to Ruby, reading fantasy, and telling her of brave heroes and how she could be a hero too. And that one I showed you, that raised this volume so high in my opinion. In most volumes, in most of the Ruby anthologies, a lot of it are pretty mad to me until we get to one thing that raises my view of the entire thing, and I just find absolutely amazing. In Red Like Roses, it was Weiss telling Ruby that she should go back with her mother, and Ruby telling her that she learned long ago that happy endings weren't guaranteed for everyone, and that she was going to ensure as many as she could. That was just such an amazing scene of Ruby confronting Weiss, Ruby talking about her mother, Ruby talking about her motivation. Just absolutely amazing. In From Shadows, my favorite part was Ruby and Blake exchanging books. This might seem like a minor thing to a lot of people. I know some people who reviewed it didn't think very much of it, but this is absolutely amazing. It was the ultimate Ruby and Blake scene. Reading is the one thing that really unites them together, and it's something we just have not seen enough in the main series or even Chibi. And this, and with them talking about their favorite books and why they were their favorites, we just saw so much of Blake's character, her motivation, and understanding of why she is the way she is. It was just a great scene that the two of them shared, and I absolutely loved it. And as I said, in I Burn, my favorite scene is the one I just showed you. Yang reading to Ruby, which she actually does in two different parts, and honestly, they're both amazing. The second one takes place shortly after Summer's death, and it is just... It's unbelievable. It's time mourning, Yang just being angry and sad, just trying to protect Ruby, Crow being there to support them, even Raven showing up in some capacity. And honestly, if that scene were ever turned into the anime, made as a flashback or whatever, I can already hear people screaming about how much it would mean to them to see that. But that wasn't the scene that was my favorite. It was the other scene where Yang's reading to Ruby, where she's telling her of great heroes and conquests and how the hero fights with a burning spirit, and this reflects back on Yang at a later point in the story, and Ruby is just so freaking adorable in this part. We can all agree on that. Honestly, I would just love a flashback series of young Ruby and Yang just living at home, running away from Grimm, Uncle Crow stopping in every now and again while drunk. That would be absolutely amazing to me. Like I said, though, it was the flashback to Yang reading to Ruby that really just made it absolutely amazing for me. The rest of it was pretty okay. We got another flashback earlier in of young Yang unlocking her semblance in order to protect Ruby. That was really nice, and oddly enough, two different stories of Ruby and Yang fighting Ruby running away and then Yang having to run in to save her. That was a little weird. It was literally basically the same story, just with some slight differences. Also a little more meta overall. There is one point where they're discussing Yang's semblance and what she can absorb and what she can't, and someone mentions, you were able to stop a paladin's punch, but Adam still managed to cut off your arm, and she very clearly has both arms in the scene, so someone asks, what timeline are we in? Which is absolutely amazing. Weiss then summons a giant meteor, which is going to destroy all of Beacon, so that's interesting. I mean, I'm fairly certain she does not have that power in the anime, or I feel like she would have used it by now. There's also another scene where they're discussing who's the funniest, and obviously it's Blake. When Blake asks why that's obvious, they say Ruby Chibi confirmed it. Twins make another appearance. We remember them from the Yellow trailer and briefly again in Volume 3 when Neptune tried to hit on them. Didn't go well for him. But that's also an amazing fight scene in here. So overall, I was very happy with I Burn. If I were to rank the anthologies, say first bottom is Mirror Mirror, then Red Like Roses, then I Burn, and finally From Shadows. Though as I explained, From Shadows is strictly my favorite because of that one scene. Just the interaction between Ruby and Blake in there is absolutely amazing. Final thoughts. Like I said, there was not a lot of Bumblebee action in this, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I got my fill in From Shadows in this last volume of RWBY. The last page seems to imply that this will not be, or may not be, the last anthology. It says, to be continued. Maybe then that means the next one will be pairs, White Rose and Bumblebee. I could also see them doing a John, Nora, and Ren anthology, but well, I think John could certainly have some interesting things. Ren and Nora would be just be weird if they have separate ones, because they're basically fused at the hip. I mean, obviously Nora could have her own thing without Ren doing crazy stuff all the time, but then Ren's would just be him sitting there sipping tea the whole time. Said before, the flashback series of Ruby and Yang would be good, but why not all the kids, you know? Show what happened to Ren and Nora after his village was attacked. Where the heck did they go? How did they end up at Beacon? I mean, that's a whole story I'd love to see as well. And that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you like my reviews. And I will see you all next time. Peace.